Hello and welcome to the Bundesliga show, Derby Day Dive-In, which is brought to you by Over the Bar, with your hosts, myself, Rory Petrie, and Mark Broadhurst of Nuremberg. We are very excited to be starting another brand new mini-series slash project, which is all about the derbies of the Bundesliga teams. So these episodes are going to be a concentrated focus on each of the unique derbies that are played within the Bundesliga and what basically makes them so special. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Before we go into it, we're going to be starting off with the Revier derby, which of course is Borussia Dortmund and Schalke. But before we do so, please do us a favour by clicking that big red button and subscribing. If you are watching on YouTube, it will do us a fantastic amount of help. And click the bell icon as well so you do not miss an episode. And please do the same if you are listening on an audio platform. And don't forget to drop us a review and a rating. Yes, episode number 1, Borussia Dortmund and Schalke. Mark, I believe you're going to run us through a bit of the history around this fantastic derby.
Yeah, so I mean, where to start? I mean, this is by all means the biggest derby in Germany. I think most Bayern Munich fans would probably disagree with that fact, but I think there's no denying when you look at the history and the kind of culture around the clubs that Bayern Munich can't really compare to having a derby on the same level to the same extent as what Borussia Dortmund and Schalke 04 have. So just to let you guys know a little bit about the location of the two clubs, first of all. So both of these clubs are situated only 35 kilometers away from each other in the northwest of Germany, in what is known as Nordrhein-Westphalia in German. I think more English people know it as the Ruhrpott or the Ruhr Valley. Now, this is an area which historically was very much a kind of working class part of Germany. You can probably compare this part of Germany actually to the northwest and kind of Yorkshire area of England. Actually, the history of the towns is very much based around steel, coal mining, and cotton, and very much industrial towns. Yeah. Obviously, Schalke isn't actually based in a town called Schalke, which might surprise a few people. Actually, the town where Schalke is based is in Gelsenkirchen, which again is only 35 or roughly 20 miles away from Dortmund. So it very, very much is a real definition of a local derby, this one. Now, again, just to touch on the fact that obviously the two areas are very, very much industrial basins in Germany. Like around the wartime, they were very much the kind of the heartland, the industrial heartland of the country. And as a result, the area is very, very much a working class area. You have a lot of, to this day, you have a lot of big pharmaceutical companies and industrial companies in the area. And as a result, the kind of feeling of the clubs, very much like in the likes of Liverpool, Manchester, football runs through the absolute veins of the people in Nordrhein-Westphalia. These two clubs aren't the only clubs in the area as well. Like obviously, you guys, you know about you followers of the Bundesliga, you know the other teams as well, like FC Cologne, Bayer Leverkusen, Borussia Mönchengladbach, Arminia Bielefeld. They're all based in that area. Yeah, so this is a real, in my opinion, this is the football hotbed of Germany, really, even more so than Bavaria, where I'm actually based at the moment. Most people here would disagree, but I think, yeah, this is a real hotbed for football, yeah. Looking more specifically at the clubs, the rivalry is really, really fierce between the two clubs, specifically the fans. The two clubs, they did meet for the first time in their history in 1925, which ended in a 4-2 victory for, you guessed it, Schalke 04. So it's obviously Schalke making the great start to the derby, but it very much kind of caught fire, as Rory will tell you a little bit later, in the later years. Additionally, Gelsenkirchen is in fact the poorest city in the whole of Germany. Actually, according to a recent survey, the average salary is lower in Gelsenkirchen, and they do refer to themselves as the coal miners. That is the nickname of the club. And they also have some of the chants on the terraces of the ferocious Schalke 04 fans. They sing about the fact they are the coal miners. On top of that, the club are very, very much against kind of modern corporate football as well. That's one thing that the two clubs very much share in common. Both of them are against modern football, so to speak, as they regularly show on tifos, on their kind of famous yellow wall in Dortmund, and obviously the kind of equivalent in Schalke. It's they're very much against the modern kind of investment into football, and they're very much about the fan culture. These two clubs, they are the life and breadth of the community, and they will do anything to kind of repel the kind of modern money culture in football. So I think, despite the fact they are very much rivalries and rivals, and when it comes to match day, it's as fierce as a rivalry as anything else. But I think fundamentally, you've got to remember these two clubs do share similar kind of values. So I think despite the fact that they are fierce rivals, they are fierce local rivals, I think similar values run through the kind of the breadth of the club. And it's very much a pride of the clubs that they are working class, they are miners, and many people in that area, that part of Germany, they live for football, and they are true football fans, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. I think what you're saying there, Mark, is much like every local derby in terms of working class fan, football is basically everything. At the end of the day, those bragging rights are absolutely huge. And like, again, most derbies, it's kind of like the opposite way round in terms of how a fan would talk about someone. So you're either royal blue or you're either a black and yellow. Even there's so much animosity among, say, the more passionate fans of these two clubs that they don't even dare say the other team's name. I think they've got more derogatory names for each other's teams, which is obviously understandable for coming from any kind of supporting football fans' point of view. So that obviously gives you a bit of an insight into the real kind of locality and passion behind these two teams. And so what I'll do is now I'll kind of talk about a little bit of the balance of power through the years in terms of the actual derby itself. So as Mark very correctly referred to, the first ever competitive meeting was a 4-2 win for Schalke. And basically this started a near enough 20-year period of dominance of the Royal Blues. They were led very well by legendary manager Ernst Kusura, who basically introduced this kind of early version of almost tiki-taka football, as obviously a lot of people now kind of know these days, as kind of one-touch football, which basically dominated German football for a long period of time. So that was so much so there was, there was this respect given by Dortmund, because there was quite a lot of big beatings basically from that Dortmund received early on in those years, so much so that Schalke were actually welcomed and given an escort to go and sign the Golden Visitors Book in Dortmund. That was after Schalke came and celebrated one of their league titles. So as much as there was that heavy rivalry, there was still a good amount of respect for both clubs. And then we kind of move on a little bit into the later half of the 20th century. So we're now looking into the 40s and into the 50s, as basically when Dortmund arrived in this derby and as a team, as they went through to win some national titles in the 50s and the early 60s. This was just before the Bundesliga itself formed, which was in the early 60s. And so as the Bundesliga formed, these two teams, Schalke and Dortmund, were in fact inaugural members of the Bundesliga. They were selected, one of the select few teams that were part of the reformation. And so these two teams would then go on to share dominance as the Bundesliga was formed. And although this did include a 12 competitive match unbeaten run for Schalke between the late 60s going almost through into the 1980s. So this derby has always kind of had a rich history behind it, and from a neutral's point of view, it's fantastic because how evenly it's been balanced, really. I think there's always been a competitive nature to them. Sometimes there are derbies, maybe, for example, like the Sud derby, which is Bayern Munich and Stuttgart, which is quite heavily proportioned to Bayern Munich wins. However, obviously, as Mark will allude to when we kind of talk about the overall records, it's very, very close, this one. So it's much more entertaining, and it's even more fiercely competitive because there's always that battle for supremacy, really. So that's kind of like a brief overall of how the balance has happened throughout the years and up until this point, which we're talking about now, as Dortmund do have the upper hand as things stand right now. However, we'll have to wait and see how that goes on. So going to go back over to Martin now, and we're going to talk about a little bit about how these two teams measure up when it comes to their trophy cupboards.
Yeah, so let's have a look at that. Like some of the information might be a little bit surprising to some people, I guess. So let's start with the head-to-head in the whole history of these clubs. So obviously, I mentioned before the first derby was 95 years ago. So as you'd imagine, they have played a number of times. Yeah. And overall, actually, contrary to what most people may believe, Schalke actually hold the upper hand just about, but only by 6 wins. So Schalke have actually clocked up 60 wins over those 95 years, and Dortmund have clocked up 54 with another 43 draws on top of that. Yeah. So actually Schalke remain ahead in this record. Yeah. I mean, obviously with their team at the moment, I think Dortmund will quite fancy catching up those victories quite quickly. So, I mean, Schalke better get their act together in the Bundesliga to make sure they don't lose that record, I guess, at the moment. But yeah, moving more over to trophies, actually, we decided together that we were going to have a look at more at the Bundesliga trophies, because obviously it is the Bundesliga show after all. And actually, in terms of Bundesliga titles, which did start in 1962, the first one of them, and since then, Dortmund have actually won 5 Bundesliga titles. And Schalke, surprisingly, despite the fact they are like one of the biggest clubs in Germany, have never won the Bundesliga title in that time. But I have to announce 2 things, Schalke fans. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten these. You have been runner-up 7 times. Yeah. And I think on at least 3 or 4 of those times, you pretty much threw it away, guys. Yeah. Specifically, I think the most famous time was when you, I think it was in 2002 or 3, and the final whistle had blown, and Schalke were champions, but Bayern Munich, them again, yeah, Schalke's second biggest rival, notched late into stoppage time to steal the title, agonizingly underneath them. Yeah. But then actually, yeah, so Dortmund hold the upper hand when it comes to Bundesliga titles, but also Schalke did win the title 7 times before the days of the Bundesliga. Yeah, so we have to remember that as well. Although football was semi-professional at that time in Germany, they still did. They've been champions of Germany, so to speak, 7 times. Yeah. So just since they renamed it the Bundesliga, it's not been quite so successful. Yeah, moving on to the Deutsche DFB Pokal, which is the German Cup in English. Actually, Dortmund also hold the upper hand there as well, with 8 titles to Schalke's 5 titles. But actually, I think Dortmund have won it 3 times in the last decade. So before the kind of Klopp era, when we have seen a big divide in the 2 clubs, it was about level there as well. But Dortmund have overtaken during the kind of more successful recent years. And then actually also both teams have won European honours as well. I think most famously, the only Champions League that both of these sides hold is actually a Dortmund one, which was that famous 3-1 win over Juventus in 1997, which I think everybody remembers that. What a massive shock at the time. Obviously, Dortmund have also been runners-up as recently as 2013 with their unlucky 2-1 win against fellow German side, Bayern Munich. And actually, also another interesting piece of information regarding Dortmund is that they won the European Cup Winners' Cup in the 60s, and they were actually the first German team to win any piece of silverware at that time. So that's a big thing for the Dortmund fans. They won it before Schalke and Bayern, so that's quite a big point. And then Schalke also won a UEFA Cup as well. So it's not all bad for Schalke. They have had their fair share of success as well. So yeah, as you can see, all in all, both very successful sides and relatively comparable, although I would say probably Dortmund have just about shaded the rivalry in terms of silverware, but Schalke have shaded it when it comes to head-to-head record at the moment.
Yeah, it's a very close run thing, like we said, which makes it such a rich and interesting derby to review and have a look at. And certainly by the looks of things right now, Dortmund seems to be in the better position to be challenging for silverware. Hopefully Schalke can have a bit of a revival. Obviously, as we are recording, they do sit in the lower half, or well, rock bottom basically, of the Bundesliga. So there are things obviously that needs to improve at Schalke at the current moment, Mark. So do you think that realistically it's going to be Dortmund adding to their silverware before Schalke can get anywhere near some in the near future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dortmund, of course, are a stellar side nowadays. I'd probably say they're one of the top 10 kind of clubs in Europe nowadays, whereas Schalke are far, far away from that. I mean, I think Schalke over the last 10, 15 years, it's just been like a gradual decline, hasn't it, really? It's been like, I think obviously they did finish second under Daniel Tedesco in 2018, I think it was.
Yeah.
That was like 1 year of respite, but I think other than that, the last 10 years has been pretty much a disaster for the Gelsenkirchen side, hasn't it? Meanwhile, Dortmund, they struggle to beat their old rivals Bayern, but I still think they're come to be the second best team in Germany, and I think they can definitely. They're never far away from winning silverware, are they? So yeah, I think with the head-to-head though, that can be different because I think Derby being as big as it is, being such a big deal, I do think that I think Schalke can still get some shock wins over Dortmund, despite the fact they are very much a club in transition at the minute. So, although the one just a few weeks ago did finish 3-0 to Dortmund, so they got the upper hand so far this season.
They have done. They have done indeed. So that is what the trophy honours kind of looks like at the moment as we're recording this present time in November in the year 2020. What we're going to do is now we're going to have a quick look back at some of the more iconic matches between the two teams. So the first one we're going to quickly talk about is we're going to take you back to September 1969, basically a time in Germany when tensions were already quite high in the Ruhr region of Western Germany due to basically the collapse of the mining industry, as we'd already mentioned, a very working class area of Germany, and kind of subsequent loss of jobs for the working man put even more of an emphasis onto these local derbies. So on the 6th, these two teams met in another Revier derby. And basically the kind of story of the day is that in a 42-seater stadium in Dortmund's Rote-Erde Stadium, before obviously they moved on to Signal Iduna Park, they crammed in 50,000 ticketless fans. So it was already heaving. And in the first half, Hans Perkner's first half strike gave the away side Schalke the lead, which led to fans storming onto the pitch, absolute carnage ensuing. So basically the police, obviously a heavy police force there anyway, they released their dogs, which has been done in previous occasions, to try and gather a bit of control of this match and get it going again. However, one dog called Rex decided to sink its teeth into the behind of Schalke defender Friedel Rausch. So this is just now getting completely balmy, this game, this massive rivalry, and it's the one people that you'd expect to be able to take control of it, the police, which is almost escalating things and making things worse. So yes, unfortunately, Rex did a bit of a misdemeanor. However, remarkably, the defender, Rausch, got himself a tetanus jab from the team doctor and then went on to complete the full 90 minutes of what was, in the end, a 1-1 draw. So after kind of the dust had settled, Rausch, the defender for Schalke, did indeed apparently receive a 500 Deutschmark, which is around $290 odd. I think it kind of translates to, and a bouquet of flowers as an apology from their rivals as a result of this misdemeanor. So that is just one example of how this derby has been ignited by not only what's happened on the pitch, but what can often sometimes happen in the stands. And as much as we kind of joke about that, that is the potential to see less savoury things happen. So it's a good thing that one kind of remarkable thing how defenders ended up being bitten. He wasn't the only player that got bitten as well. I think there was another player who got bitten on the leg. So yeah, it's absolute madness of a time and of a game. So that was a very, very, very interesting game. Of course, there's been lots of other notable and remarkable games that these two teams have been involved in. Not forgetting the derby in December of 1997, that remarkable game where certain Jens Lehmann popped up to score a 90th minute equaliser, which was the 33,325th goal, that's a mouthful, in Bundesliga history, and that was the first ever by a goalkeeper from open play. So there you go. That's an incredible stat for you. So that ended up making that a 2-2 draw back in 1999. Certainly one, well, more perhaps game that Dortmund fans would rather remember than Schalke fans was one back in 2007 when Dortmund would go and win 2-0 to stop Schalke from winning their maiden Bundesliga title. Like we've already mentioned, they unfortunately have not won a Bundesliga title so far in their history. Goals from Alex Frey and Ebi Smorelek gave BVB a 2-0 shock win, which meant that they fell behind Stuttgart and lost and came runners-up again. Which kind of leads us on nicely into quite a recent memory where we've had two absolutely amazing games between these two teams. The first being Jurgen Klopp's first ever derby. And he soon found his side 3-0 down early on, to which remarkably they came back to draw 3-3, which would have been a fantastic result for Klopp and one of many under his reign. However, that 3-3 has been topped in recent years, hasn't it, Mark, with the amazing 4-4 draw back in 2017 when the visitors, Schalke, found themselves 4-0 down after 25 minutes, thanks to goals from Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, of course. Everyone knows him very well. Mario Götze, Rafael Guerreiro, who is still there, and a Benjamin Stambouli own goal. 4-0 down after near enough 25 minutes. Schalke kind of probably just came out in the second half with a goal of winning the second half in theory. So go out, get a couple of goals and give yourself something, to celebrate. They went and got 2 goals, make it interesting. And then they set themselves up for a grandstand finish as well, with Aubameyang then also getting sent off. Daniel Caligiuri curled in an effort to set up a fantastic finish, as in the end a corner was whipped in and defender Naldo rose up in the 94th minute to power home a header to make it 4-4. I mean, that is a fantastic, fantastic game. I've seen it a good few times, and the passion, the celebrations behind that from Schalke on one end being elated to get that draw. And obviously looking at the Jurgen Klopp one as well, it's amazing how much satisfaction these fans and these teams can get out of just taking points on each other, not even winning. So there's obviously that such rich kind of desire to get one over on one's rivals, as you always would do. So they are certainly some of the highlights in terms of this iconic rivalry that we've seen so far. So that is really something to celebrate, I think, indeed. So now looking forward, we've got the next Revier Derby in match day 22 of this current season, which will be in around between the 19th and the 22nd of February in 2021. Naturally, that's about 3 months away. Hopefully, this game can be played in front of fans, which I think will make a huge difference for the sides. Mark, this is fantastic derby, and I think it deserves to be one that is played in front of fans. Do you think how much do you think this derby is missing those iconic fans and the rivalry? Obviously, we've seen the most recent one played out behind closed doors, which was a 3-0 win to Borussia Dortmund. It's not quite the same without the fans, is it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think especially derby games, especially this derby more than any, it needs fans, really. I think we've met one of the biggest things about the German football is the fan culture. Like, in my opinion, it's the best fan culture out of any of the major 5 leagues in Europe, which include England, France, Italy, Spain, and Germany. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to go to a lot of Bundesliga games and even second Bundesliga games, and like the atmosphere is unrivaled. And I mean, anybody who's been to a Dortmund v Schalke derby, I'm pretty sure that they would agree that it's probably one of the kind of best games to go to when it comes to derby. I mean, both fans just shout their heads off home and away. Like, you're usually looking at like 6,000 to 7,000 away fans, all dressed in the colours and everything. Like, you don't really have the same level of hooliganism here as you do in England, especially in the past. But the people are just so absolutely desperate to see the team win, and it's like, it's the bragging rights, because again, we mentioned before, this is an industrial area, and it's bragging rights. A lot of these people probably work with Schalke or Dortmund fans, depending on which team they support.
Yeah.
And they want to show off for the next 6 months and say, ha ha ha, we beat you, And if you lose, then it's gutting, yeah. And I can guarantee you, I can confirm that every single German football fan is just desperate to get back in the stadiums and get supporting the teams again.
Yeah, for sure. And let's not forget, in amongst all this rivalry and animosity sometimes between the two teams, there is obviously that level of respect, and the fact that we can't forget about how both of these teams have helped each other out financially. Back in the day, I think it was when Borussia Dortmund were really struggling after being relegated, and in around the 70s, and it was around the time when they just built their new Westfalen Stadium, now obviously the Signal Iduna Park. It had just been constructed in time for the FIFA World Cup in 1974 in Germany, and Schalke were invited to come and kind of open up the stadium, obviously, as their arch rivals. However, due to the financial problems, the Royal Blues agreed to make an appearance without any fee and allowed all the money and the gate receipts to go towards their rivals so that they can make the most of this. So let's not forget, amongst all of this, there is that level of kind of sportsmanship, and owing to, obviously, on the one hand, they hate each other, but on the other side, they wouldn't be without each other. You wouldn't want a team to go under, so you'd be without these fantastic derbies. So there certainly is an awful lot between these two teams. Certainly one of the big derbies in the Bundesliga to date, and we are lucky to have it, and we can't wait to see even more of these games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much rounds us up. We've looked at the history, how it's gone through the years, how many trophies these two teams have, and some iconic games as well. So that will pretty much round us up for this first Bundesliga show Derby Day Dive-In, which has been an absolute pleasure talking about these two fantastic clubs in Germany. So, as per usual, if you're watching on YouTube, please do give us a subscribe and drop in the comments if you've enjoyed this particular segment of the Bundesliga show. If you do, of course, we'll do lots more of them, as we are planning to do. And if you want to suggest anything for future shows, please do so. And again, if you're listening on an audio platform, please do give us a rating and a review. So over to Mark to tidy up and finish off.
Absolutely. I hope you guys have all enjoyed our kind of Riviera Derby sum up, but also if you want to hear a bit more information about football, anything related as well, of course, check out our Twitter feed, which is at Over the Bar FB, so you can find out about Bundesliga anymore. Obviously, on top of that, try to watch our previous videos as well. We've got a number of videos related to the Bundesliga, including obviously our weekly roundup, our preview, and obviously our European edition now as well, which I hope you enjoy too. And then also continue to visit our website, which is like our main piece of the site, where you can basically find connections to anything related to articles, the League One show as well. Remember the League One show? This is two absolute hard nuts of League One football, battling it out against each other for who knows the most. So yeah. yeah. So remember to check that out as well. But other than that, thanks a lot, guys. It's been awesome. See you next time.
Cheers all.